Welcome to our Thursday edition of Deep Treks. I'm Dan Shipton. Today we're going to be in Mark chapter 12, and I hope that you will continue with us as we continue in this study of Mark all the way up to Easter. And we are going to be celebrating Easter in just another couple of weeks. Hard to believe. Well, I again thank everybody for their prayers this past week, and I know we're praying for one another with all this weather stuff going on. And so we are going to be just continuing to pray for those who are going through recovery of trying to get their homes back together and things like that after ice storms, tornadoes, and other things have went through. Today we are looking in Mark chapter 12, and we are looking at the setup that Jesus is facing over and over. The Pharisees, the Sadducees, the others who are leaders. And today we're even going to see the politicians coming into this discussion. They're trying to find ways to get Jesus. We're going to be down in verse 13 of chapter 12 of Mark. And in that verse, it says they were trying to trap him in his talk. So I think this is important because trying to trap him in his talk just shows that this was all a setup from the beginning. And so today's setup is about taxes, everybody's favorite thing this time of year. We're all getting our taxes done and paperwork filled out and all that other fun stuff. But today we are looking at verse 13 to 17. So let's begin reading. And it says, "And they sent to him some of the Pharisees and some of the Herodians to trap him in his talk." Now, Pharisees we know. We've met them several times in this discussions of Mark and other places. Pharisees are the lawyers of the legality of Jewish law. They were the ones that would haul people in for adultery. They would haul people in for blasphemy and all these other things. Who are the Herodians, though? Well, the appointed king of Israel, of the Jews, is a person who really doesn't belong there, but he's been favorable to the Romans, and so the Romans kind of put him in. He's of Jewish descent, but he's not really a true Jew because he's not really following it and he's not really abiding by it, and he and his family never have. And so these are the politicians of Jewish society who support Herod as the king of the Jews. People are looking for a king to come and take them away from Rome and save them. They're looking for a Messiah to do that. We've kind of talked about that fact before, but here, these Herodians don't want that. These Herodians like Rome. They're getting kickbacks. They're politicians after all. And like most politicians, they act like politicians. So they came and they said to him, it tells us at the end in verse 14, they came and said to him, "Teacher, we know that you are true and do not care about anyone's opinion, for you are not swayed by appearances, but are truly teaching the way of God. So is it lawful to pay taxes to Caesar or not? Should we pay them or should we not?" Now, I remind you, these are not just the lawyers of the Jewish people, but the politicians. So they're playing Jesus here because, hey, appearances don't matter to you. You like the truth. Politicians only care about appearances. They only cared that people looked up to them and that they had Herod's ear and they had the ear of the leaders of the religious society, and they kind of played the middleman between them. And they got money from both sides. Jesus knows this. And so they bring this ridiculous question to Jesus. Is it lawful to pay taxes to Caesar or not? Now, something you may not realize is in their society, as much as you hate your taxes, they literally hated taxes because taxes are going to this foreign occupier. Rome is occupying their land. It is not being treated as their land, hasn't been for a long time, hundreds and hundreds of years now. The Greeks and the Romans have been running them over. And so a lot of people don't pay taxes. A lot of people, that was their way of protesting against Rome. So they would try to not pay taxes. People would go to jail. People would stand up. People would fight for the rights and go to, become gladiators to fight against taxes of Rome. And so these Herodians, obviously, they're willing to kick back a little bit to Rome because they're getting tons back from them. And a lot of the Jewish people are really wanting a Messiah to free them from this system. So, on one hand, if Jesus answers and says to this question, hey, we don't pay taxes to Rome, he's now supporting the radical part of Judaism, these people who really want to fight against Rome and they want to start a war. And if he does that, he's guilty of sedition. And the Pharisees will go run off, and they'll tell the priest, and the priest will go run off, and Herod will go run off, and all together they'll go to Rome, and they'll have him killed as a person who is not paying their taxes and trying to start a war. That's their way of getting rid of him. That's why it's a trap. It's also a trap if he says, oh yeah, pay taxes. Because now Rome doesn't get involved, but they can go out to all the people and say, look, this is the guy you think is going to be your Messiah, and he's saying pay taxes to Caesar? So it's a trap. Either way, it's a trap. Let's see how Jesus responds to this, because he gives them the best answer possible. So is it lawful? Should we pay taxes? Should we not? We don't know. Verse 15, look at what it says. But knowing their hypocrisy, he knows their hearts, but he knows they're hypocrites because they're claiming not to understand taxes when that's what's their whole life. Why put me to the test, he asks. Bring me the denarii. Let me look at it. And they brought one to him, and he said to them, whose likeness is on this? Whose inscription? And they said, Caesar's. And Jesus said to them, then render to Caesar the things that are Caesar's, and to God the things that are God's. And they marveled at him. Why did they marvel? Because they came in with a plan to trap him. On one side, I get Rome to kill you. On the other side, we get the people to hate you. Either way, it's a win-win for them. Jesus doesn't pick the sides they wanted. They were being hypocrites, and he knew that. So he asks them, look at the coin. Who does it really belong to? If you looked at one of our coins or one of our dollars, if you're here in America, it belongs to the government. If you're in another country, it belongs to your government. The money is theirs. It's printed by them. And that's what Jesus is saying. You see, the other problem with this whole thing is he says, render to Caesar what is Caesar's and God what is God's. In other words, he's also calling out these Herodians because they were very much politicians and loving Rome. They gave parts of their tithe to the synagogue, to the temple, but they weren't real good tithers, and they didn't care about the poor, and neither did a lot of the Pharisees. And he knows that, which is why he's saying, render to God what is God's. Give respect to God that is due to God. And they're not doing it. Instead, they're bringing up silly arguments. So the setup is about taxes. And Jesus is wise beyond all wisdom to answer the way he did. He doesn't buy into the thing that's going to get one or the other. He says, whose inscription? He turns it all around on him again. So today I want to challenge you when you're faced with situations where you're defending the Bible, where you're defending your faith. Use wisdom. Seek God's wisdom. In that moment, ask up one of those silent prayers and say, God, give me the right words to say here because I'm not sure I'm going to say it right. Even if you know the answer, you should always ask that because I may not say it right. I may get angry, and I don't want to do that. I want to make the point. Jesus doesn't get angry. He just flat out asks them, whose picture's on it? On the other side of this, I also want to challenge you because we could also be hit with this and say, are we giving to God what is God's? I mean, most of us probably will say, oh, yeah, we pay our taxes. We give to Caesar what is Caesar's. But are we giving God the respect, the love, the commitment that we're supposed to in every area of our life? Or do we pick and choose, going back to yesterday's study, a couple days study ago, or do we pick and choose who we're going to, or how we're going to give, or how we're going to do this? I literally knew somebody one time who refused to tithe to the church because he was mad at some people in the church. And I said, but God says we're supposed to give a tithe. Now, you can argue about the tithe all you want, but overall in Scripture it tells us we're supposed to tithe. And his answer was, well, I'm going to give it to missions. I'm going to give it to this. I'm going to give it to that. I said, so you're choosing where it's going to go instead of giving it to the people of God to choose. And you're coming to a church and you're not going to support the church you're a part of. Doesn't make any sense to me. You can have disagreements with people, but to pull back and not do your part, to not help the poor, to not show love, to not show sincerity in following God, it's still a sin. So are there areas of your life that you're picking and choosing still of what you're going to follow and what you're not? I know I'm stepping on toes because I'm stepping on my own toes. There's times I would rather not do certain things. I'm like the rest of you. Sometimes I get up in the morning and say, I don't want to do this, God. But I have to pray and I have to get my life right, straightened out, and get back on track. So I hope today you stay on track. I hope that you help others in your life stay on track. And I hope that you take the blessings of God into your life and that this study will continue to help you grow as you trek this journey.
That's today's Devo on Deep Treks. No matter how deep the questions or dark the doubts, there's always a path forward. Reach out at deeptreks.com with prayer needs or topics you'd like us to explore. Keep trekking. Renewal is never far away. Be blessed on the journey and bless others along the way.